everybody. Welcome to ToRAISE Questions Doula podcast. Hi, Thérèse.
Hey, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good. I'm Sarah Allen Short.
Yes, you are.
And you are Thérèse Hakoon.
Yes, I am.
And you are the executive director of ToLabor, and you're a doula trainer, and you're a doula, and you've been a midwife's assistant, and you're a mother,
Yes.
and you're a businesswoman, and you're a
Yes.
partner, and you're lots of things.
Yes, like so many of
Yes.
us, and you as well.
Yes, I'm some of those things. So this is our 25th episode.
Wow.
It's like our quarter century mark or something.
Yeah.
I had a little quarter life crisis when I was 25 because this is the dumbest thing. I can't even tell it. I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time, not married, no children. And I became obsessed with the fact that Queen Latifah, who I don't even know if she was the same age as me, but she was really successful by 25 or something like that. I don't know why I was so worried about her. But anyway, this is our 25th podcast. That was a little random aside.
Well, let's see.
I'm very proud of us.
I am too.
Even if Queen Latifah had more than 25 podcasts by the time she was my age, I'm very proud of us. Let's get started. Let's talk about our topic today.
Which I think we were going to discuss prenatal visits
Yes.
and what you want to talk about, what you want to bring, how the first prenatal visit goes. This is a question that comes up a lot.
Yes.
And I think it's a really legitimate question. And I have some insights, and I'm anxious to hear your insights and how you have done prenatal visits.
Good. So let's do that. So
Yeah.
before we do that, I want to let everybody know to please like us on Facebook.
Yes.
Is there anything? I always feel I'm terrible at this business part of it. Like when I listen to other podcasts, people they introduce themselves, they have their little script, and every single time they say who they are and what they do and why they're there. And I forget half the time. So I think I did that, but look at our Facebook page, look at our website, blah, blah, blah. I'll say more after the main part.
Yes.
Yeah.
And our website, though, isn't blah, blah, blah. It's ToLabor.com.
ToLabor.com. Oh, yeah. And so we did, if you listened a lot, if this is your first podcast, please go back because as I may have mentioned, we've done 25 of these babies on a lot of topics. So please go back and listen to them. They're all available on iTunes and Libsyn, LIBSN.com. And if you have questions that you want us to talk about. I mean, a lot of the way that we get ideas for podcasts is from listener questions.
Yep.
We sometimes have case studies where we have listeners call in and talk about a particular difficult birth and get, just feedback information after it's over about what they could have done, what they did well, what maybe to think about next time. So if you'd like to do a case study or if you have a question for us, email us at toraisequestions@gmail.com. Okay, so we've been getting a lot of requests to talk about prenatal visits.
Yeah.
I think for new doulas, this is a big topic. I think even if you are an experienced doula, I hope you'll listen to this all the way through and see if you get some new ideas or if you have ideas to share with us.
Right.
Share on our Facebook page. So let's talk about prenatal visits. Let's start with some pretty practical stuff and then let's get into more philosophical stuff. How many do you like to do?
I think, it's not a matter of how many I like to do. It feels like you could do so many visits. But I think the average for most doulas is to do 2 prenatal visits with their clients. And this is a question people will ask that question at workshops, like, we're learning so much during that time and there's so much information that's being given that you want to make sure your clients know. And then the participants will say, well, how many prenatal visits do you have? Because it sounds like it's impossible to get all this information in. You're also doing phone calls and,
Right.
That kind of communication in between. But you really want to have, I think, wouldn't you agree, 2 is really, sometimes 1 is all there is, but I always feel like 1 is just not enough unless there isn't enough time.
Well, yeah.
And it can depend on your client as well, but I feel like 2 is really kind of a good number.
I think 2 is the most common number.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's interesting. What I want to say to our listeners is there's no right answer, and you're going to find what works for you. And I'm interested in hearing different people's experience. I've really changed my practice over time, and my contract says 1. and I expect to do 2. And the reason it says 1 is because I find that it sets this, if you say you're going to do 2 prenatal visits, it sets an expectation for 2 formal visits. And what I find that I end up doing is 1 kind of long prenatal.
And what is long to you? Because I have
2 hours.
Okay, because I think, can I interject here?
Yeah.
I think that a prenatal visit, and this is something we've talked about other times as well, I guess this is really the beginning, must be done with an agenda, which we're going to talk about, and with a time frame.
Yes.
And I think that your clients, when you are setting this appointment up, you need to be clear on, we will be meeting from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, or the maximum amount of time should be 3 hours. You should never do more than 3 hours, and I really don't think less than 2.
Then you're really doing mini childbirth sessions.
And, it's also, again, having a time frame. Because we want that... you
want to set the expectation.
Exactly. That you are conducting a session with them.
Right.
Not just an informal chat.
So I know a lot of doulas, that would prefer to do 3 1-hour sessions rather than 1 3-hour session, or a lot that think you're giving them too much information. It's too overflow. I don't think there's a right answer. For me, I have found when I do an hour, I'm just starting to really start to connect with them.
Yeah, that would be me as well.
And so for me, I would rather do a 2-hour or just over. And then what I find is, and here's something else that I do that I feel is a little different than just based anecdotally on what I hear doulas do. When I was a new doula, I always heard, get in with people early, have your first prenatal early, really get to know them during a pregnancy, in their pregnancy.
But I mean, like, what is early?
Like pre-30 weeks.
Yeah, but as we know that so many... Yeah, well, on the average, they hire you around 28 weeks.
Yeah, 28, 30 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then you do your first prenatal like right away. Mm-hmm. What I have found for myself, and again, I think a lot of people listening are going to disagree with this, that doesn't work for me. I find that a woman often, if they want to meet that early, I'm totally willing to do it. But I just feel like they are not in the birth mind frame yet. They haven't thought about it. I really prefer to do a long between 34 and 36.
But here's the reason, and I think that, Sarah, if that works and it has been working, then I think that's wonderful. I think one of the reasons it's encouraged to do 28 to 30 weeks, 32, whenever they're hiring you, getting it right from the beginning, part of it is their provider of care.
Right.
And we know that, quote unquote, it's easier to change earlier than
that's
later.
True. That's a good point.
So there's, you get somebody at 36 weeks.
They're not going to change.
It's going to be harder.
That's a good point
for them.
And I will say that I usually am having those conversations as part of the interview process and everything else. And I'm planting that seed in the interview process. But that's a good point. I just find that from a very practical standpoint, when you have someone that you're following for 12 weeks versus 4 to 6 weeks, it's, just the load of, it's just a lot. Now you do get to know people better and everything. I mean, so again, there's no right way. You got to figure out what works for you.
So the beginning of this, to clarify, is there isn't a one way, one size fits all. We know that prenatal visits with primary care providers does fit that kind of, you're going to see them once a month, and then you're going to see them every 2 weeks, and then you're going to see them once a week until your baby is born, and then you'll see them again, at 6 weeks. You can have a regular regimen with everyone. You can switch it up. You can listen to what we're suggesting here, which is going to be a mix of lots of things. Mm-hmm. But in the end, it's you who decides. I do think coming to a package idea, is important.
So in my
and
contract,
then flexibility.
In my contract, it says 1 for that expectation reason. And then in my mind, I know I'm going to do 2. But the second one is typically late, often informal. Often it's happening when the woman has hit her, 39, 40 weeks. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so done. I'm so done with being pregnant. She's feeling nervous or stressed out or whatever. And I'll say, do you want to take a walk? And then we take a walk around the, by the river or something. And it's more of an informal, it's not a sitting in your living room with my notes in my lap, which is what the first one is a very professional, very formal. I make sure I look nice. I make sure I'm on time. I make sure I have an outline. I make sure their partner's there. Their partner has to be there for the prenatal visit, has to be. And we reschedule if they can't be, if they have one. And then the second one tends to be more informal. And between the first visit, I like to talk to her after every doctor's appointment or before every doctor's appointment, with a phone conversation, not just texting. All my clients want to just text me after the doctor's appointment and go, all looks great, 1 centimeter dilated. No, that doesn't work for me. We need to talk on the phone every time you have a doctor's appointment for 5 minutes. Preferably before, so we can talk about what you should be asking, but also after. And then typically if they make it, to 39, 40 weeks, we would do another in-person meeting. So I would say I meet with my client, 99% of my clients, I meet with them twice in person, not counting the interview.
Right.
So 2, 3, 4 times we've met in person before their birth, usually.
Right. And so,
but my contract just says 1 because I just want to set the expectation.
I think that's interesting that even though you're going to do 2, you don't put 2 down.
Yeah.
But there you go. So what, the question is, well, what are you covering in that 2 or 3 hours or 1 hour, whatever so just for the sake of this conversation you and I are having, we're going to say that the person has the more typical kind of package, which is 2 2-hour.
Yeah. Let's say 2
and
prenatal visits.
Yeah. And that first prenatal visit is a time when you are going to be basically like what Sarah presented as you're on time, you have an agenda, you have a time frame, and you're making it really clear. And I strongly suggest that 15 minutes before your appointment is coming to an end of that 2-hour period of time, that you are saying, we have about 15 minutes right now to finish up. I know we've covered a lot. Are there any questions right now? Or however you want to kind of negotiate, but making them aware, making you aware that you can't let this go on and on and on and on. And what are you going to discuss during that period of time? Because this is your time. You've already had the initial look-see. They hired you. Now this is the actual official. So, one of the things we have on our, that is part of our question to our doulas is, what do you think are the 3 most important topics that you should cover or that you cover with your clients? And I think that, that's how is a good framework of looking at how your first prenatal visit should go. What do you think are important topics that should be discussed with your clients?
So you're saying that's something that our listeners should be thinking about.
Yeah, I think so.
And that they're not necessarily right or wrong answers, but we'd like to suggest some of the things that you might be thinking about.
But because I see different people come up with different things, but generally speaking, people have the doulas have an agreement, it seems.
Yeah. Well, I tend to think in terms of in earlier pregnancy, in first visits, I like to do the more left brain stuff. And then in the second visit, I do the more right brain stuff.
Definitely.
And you got to remember you're not a childbirth educator, or if you are a childbirth educator, you should be charging for that. It is not your job to teach them every single thing. That, in my opinion, it is not your job to teach them every single thing. Whoa, sorry, microphone issues. You cannot possibly teach them everything in 2 hours.
And so, let me just interject here as well. Your clients hopefully know many things already.
Hopefully, but not always.
I know,
yes.
but know many things, even if they just know the typical.
And the other advantage to engaging with the client at 28, 30 weeks versus later is that you can get them in a good CBE class.
Exactly.
So here are some things that I think should be on the table. And what I do is do we have on our website, I think if you become a member of our website, you get access to the documents that...
If you're not just our contact list.
Right. So how do you become...
Well, you have to take the workshop.
Okay. So if you take if you're a 2-labor doula, there's documents available to you, business documents like intake questionnaires, forms, things like that. And that's what I do is I have looked at other people's forms. I remember when I took the workshop, we passed some around. Whenever I do a workshop, I share with people what mine look like.
Right.
And that's really what guides our discussion. And so we tend to talk first. I mean, because honestly, usually I know from the interview, I know who their care provider is. I know in general, are they leaning towards natural, or are they, because some people know they want an epidural. Some people know they want natural. Some people say, well, I'm going to see what happens. I'm not sure what I can do. I generally know that stuff before, so I don't feel like we need to talk about that sort of really high level stuff. So I have an outline where we talk about some very specific things. My top topics, I think, one is what role does the partner want to play, and how does the partner want to work with you?
And can I just, again, pause here for a second? You mentioned this, and this is something that we've talked about. I've brought up many times in our podcasts, is the importance of the partner being present during this prenatal visit. It is important that I believe this is really important, that the partner be, if there is one, involved in the initial interview.
Yes.
Because that's who you're going to be working with, and the partner should be at the prenatal visit. I think this is becoming much more commonplace than it ever was, but I don't want to take that for granted.
Yeah. And I think that, I have the partners, there's going to be partners that are afraid you're going to usurp them and that you're going to take over. And so you need to take the first prenatal as an opportunity to reassure them. There's going to be partners who are terrified and who want to know that you're going to help them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you have to be able to read that situation a little bit.
But also those ones who are terrified, it's a reality check though also for them. So you want to reassure them, of course you're going to be there, but what you're there for is to help them feel comfortable to be able to support.
Right. But I think, I've had clients where the woman didn't want the partner to see the baby come out, and the partner, and other ones where the partner didn't want that.
At they think that
in advance, they think, I don't want you to see that. I mean, that's not even that uncommon. I feel like that's somewhat common.
I think that women have a worry about that if their partner sees their vagina stretching out, how will that be later sexually for them?
And I think the partners have that worry too sometimes.
Yeah, I guess so. They just don't seem to verbalize it as much as the woman seems to worry about it.
Yeah. But so I think there's just a lot of navigating one phrase that I use and that a lot of people use is, you know her, I know birth. And together we make a team that's going to support her really well. Mm-hmm. You're always going to know her better than I know her. You're always going to love her more. And so I can't, getting to know you in a few weeks, know her and love her as much as you do. And so that's got to be your job. But I know birth, and you can't learn in a couple of weeks as much as I know about birth.
Yeah. And I try and other people probably say something like this or similar of, I'm there to help you remember what you already know.
Yeah. So that's a huge focus. I have a questionnaire for partners that just asks questions like, how do you support her? What do you do for her that makes her laugh? How do you support her now? How do you relax together? Just to get them thinking. I have a friend who always says, your partner's not going to, whatever you do for your partner in regular life works in labor too. And I don't totally agree with that.
I don't agree with that.
But I think she's
I think
she's trying to reassure them that
they already know.
They know that, they know what to do. And so if the partner wants to be very active, then I emphasize, I'm going to be telling you what positions to help her with or suggesting things for you. If the partner is more cautious, I describe a way that we can work together where they're going to be comfortable. So that's a huge topic, is what does the partner want?
And Sarah, not only what does the partner want, is it what...
And what the woman wants from the partner.
Okay, good.
And it's a little bit of a delicate thing, because sometimes they don't want the same, they don't have the same vision.
Yeah, I think, do you not run into this, that it's one of two things, but I'm going to use one that I think is maybe a little bit more the majority, where the woman really sees her partner just that, angelic, idealistic partner who's going to just be so involved in the labor and birth, so supportive, know all the right things to say and do, and they're just going to have this spiritual experience together.
Yeah.
And then there are the other women who are like, I don't really want them involved.
Right. Yeah.
I don't really care if they, but I love them, but
yeah. So that's one big topic. We talk, again, my first visit tends to be more the left brain stuff. So we tend to talk about what kinds of relief and comfort do you like now? What smells do you like? What smells do you not like? What do you tend to like touch? Do you tend to not like touch? I remind them and reemphasize for them that whatever they're saying may not be what they want in labor, but it's a good place to start. Just because they love lavender now, it might make them throw up in labor. Just because they love a good foot rub, they may want no one to touch them in labor, but it's at least a place to start. Mm-hmm. Are you someone who likes to laugh? Are you someone who likes, what kind of music do you, which, and I actually have a little questionnaire that says, how, which of these things do you think you might want? And it's music, touch, which kind of things. And we talk about that a lot, what you think you're going to want. Just get them thinking about that space. And we talk about how we're going to make decisions in labor. One of the things I think is really important is to prepare the partner and the woman on the role of the doula, that I am not going to be saving them from anything, that I am not going to be intervening, that I am not going to be rescuing them, that if the doctor comes in and says, this is just going way too slow, I think we need to do some Pitocin, I am not going to be jumping in and going, no, we're not doing that, because that's not my role. Because I find that's a common misconception. Is that
I think
women hire you and they say a doula is my advocate, and they think that what that means is an actual, literal, verbal advocate who's going to stand between you and the doctor and protect you from anything bad happening to you. So, honestly, we've talked about this already in the interview, but I reemphasize that.
Well, and we want to pause here for a second and really stress that this has to be part of your interview. And then once you're hired, to reiterate that in the prenatals, perhaps during the labor as well. It is really important to remind them what your role is. And it is very important for you to remember what your role is, because you are not there to be the spokesperson. And I've shared this story on a previous podcast, I believe, but a client who was a potential client calling me, asking me to be their birth assistant, and when I asked over the phone, well, what are you envisioning? It was to be just what you described, Sarah, as they just wanted to labor, and they wanted me there to be that running interference is, I think, what she said. And I was like, that's not my job.
Right.
Of course I'm going to run interference, but not in the way she was perceiving.
Right.
And
it's important. And I think you can explain it in the context of, we have all these little prepared speeches. Labor is preparing you for being a parent. You have to learn to advocate for yourself. You have to learn to make your own choices. You need to own your experience. And, I want women to make their own choices. And I just tell them that. I'm very blunt about that. So we talk a lot about that, and we talk about how are we going to make decisions. And I arm them with a few specific things. I tell the partner, whenever anybody says anything, I want you to ask, can we have a little bit of time to talk about it? Think about it alone. And sometimes, depending on the partner, we'll make a joke about, like, if I elbow you, that's what you're supposed to say, because they forget in the moment.
That's where we're running the quote unquote interference.
Right. So you don't have to know what the answer is. If the doctor comes in, what I usually say is, if it's an emergency, you're not going to have much of a choice.
Right.
If something's happening and you don't have a choice, you don't have a choice. When you do have a choice, you can always take some time to think about it. So I coach the partner. And then I talk about brain, BRAIN. What are the benefits of doing this? What are the risks of doing this? What are the alternatives? What does your intuition tell you? And what happens if you do nothing? And I coach, especially the partners, to ask those questions. So when the doctor comes in and says, you're working so hard, you don't have to be a hero. Why don't you take an epidural? I'm not going to say, excuse me, Dr. X, what are the benefits of an epidural? What are the risks of an epidural? I want the partner to ask that. And then I want them to ask for some time to think about it. At which time, you and I talked about this a little bit before, I may add a few extra bits of information that the doctor didn't share if I have them and if that feels appropriate. But I want the partner to be really prepared to advocate, to step in. And the reason I keep saying partner instead of woman, ideally it's the woman. But if you're talking about a woman in transition or even active labor, it's really hard for her to sit there and be like, what are the benefits and risks of this, that, or the other thing? Because she's out of it. She's in labor land often.
Right. But she can do it as well as we know. And so we don't ever want to leave her out of this loop or make her feel like she doesn't have to worry about having her voice.
Right.
So you do want to communicate this specifically to the partner because they're still going to be very much in their left brain.
Right.
But we want this woman who's now currently in her left brain to understand all this information.
Right.
And then, in between contractions, she can think.
Right. And that's why I mentioned, I sort of came back because I talked like I'm only talking to the partner, but often it's going to be them doing the talking. I find in later labor, they aren't thinking between contractions. They're
not, unless they have to. And that's what I always say is, Sarah, that don't ever underestimate the power of a woman's ability to find her voice, even in the most critical of situations.
Yeah. And then, so that's a topic. Another big topic for me is, I call this I think of this sort of as the spoiler part of the conversation. Because if they come into the conversation saying there's absolutely no way I'm going to have any interventions, I'm saying, well, let's talk about some scenarios where it might make sense and how we're going to handle that.
Isn't it interesting how many people, it's almost black and white in this. People will say, I'm not having any interventions, or, well, I'm really open to having, I think I want this, but I'm totally open to the fact that I might have an epidural.
Yes. And so when I hear, if I need one, I need one, that's my cue to give them some information about, it's where I bring out the article, The Hidden Risks of Epidurals. Mm-hmm. It's my cue to give them some information about, the longer you go without, here's, the cascade of interventions. I do a little bit of education about that. And if they're saying there's absolutely no way I'm not doing anything, then that's my cue to say, okay, there are situations where you need some interventions for your safety. Sometimes it's not about safety. Sometimes it's about, there's a lot of reasons why interventions could be needed.
And that's part of our education, our job.
And so we might do a couple scenarios. So let's say you're 7 centimeters and you've been in labor forever and the doctor wants to break your water. Let's talk about what you might do in that situation. And we do a little, brain, like what are the benefits? What are the risks of doing it in that position? Mm-hmm. When might it be called for? When might it not be called for? How are they going to make that decision in the moment? I reemphasize every single time, I am not going to tell you what to do.
Good. It's so important that we are reiterating that.
I reemphasize this is their birth. I reemphasize I will not be disappointed in them if they get an epidural. I think, unfortunately, women feel the expectations of doulas. Mm-hmm. And the women who want a natural birth and they hire a doula and then they don't get it and they feel like they let us down. And that is the furthest thing I want to be from their mind.
Right. So that's a big part of the communication.
So I want them to know this is their birth. I'm going to give them the info. I am not in their body. I am not having their experience. And if they are in the moment and they are making a fully informed decision that they want an epidural, that is totally their call.
Do you also, though, because this is something we talk about at other times, including the workshop, that all that said, which is what we absolutely are supposed to say, do you also say, but I also want you to understand that my job is to try and push you past that point?
If that's what they want.
Yeah, I think how it is, Sarah. The woman is in labor and it's so common. And she says, I can't do this. I can't do this.
Yes.
And so we want, and she's saying, oh, I think I need the epidural. I think I want the epidural. And we shouldn't just go, okay. And I want the woman to understand
that we're not going to do that.
That I will not stop her
from
getting what she needs. But I want her to know that part of my job is to try and push her past that point. If she can't get past that point, then of course we're going to help her get whatever it is she needs.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, that's a really good point, is to emphasize. And some women want a code word or something. Which
I never
works
even
well for me.
Well, I never understood it, to be honest, and I get it. I mean, I do understand, but I don't really see the purpose in it, because in the end, if she wants it, I'm pretty damn clear. Pretty clear that she wants it, because I've already offered her the options.
Yeah, and I think that's an important. I mean, I think some women want to just know that they can get it, and if that's their comfort level. But I think it's a good point to point out that it's my job to help you through it. And I also say, almost everybody says in labor, or thinks, I can't do this anymore. Not everybody, but almost everybody. And what I used to say when I was a new doula.
I'm good. I know what you used to say.
I used to say, when you get to the point when you think you can't do it anymore, you're in transition, and it means you're really close. Because that's what I was taught in some, not your training, but in maybe like a childbirth ed class.
Sure, it's very common.
That's what you think in transition, is you think I can't do it anymore. And so I used to tell people, whenever you get to the point where you think you can't do it anymore, that means you're close. And so we're just going to push. And then I learned that that's not always what that means. No. And sometimes people think they can't do it anymore, and they're 4 centimeters or 2 centimeters or 1 centimeter, and they've been,
or they are 8-9 centimeters, but they stay at 8-9 centimeters for hours upon hours.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't say that anymore. So what I say is, almost everybody gets to a point when they think they can't do it. And part of my job is to help get you past that. And then I talk about, the difference between pain and suffering. You're stronger than pain, but if you're suffering, that you shouldn't be suffering. And we have a lot of tips and tricks and tools, but at the end of the day, it's your call and it's your body, and I'm not in your body.
And another thing that I've heard doulas say, that they have said, that I just want to kind of maybe throw this into it, is that they'll say, almost all women either say it or are thinking that they can't do this anymore, and that's really common. And my job is to try and help get you past that point, if I can help you get past that point. And usually that works. Don't say that, because then if it doesn't work for her, she feels, because a lot of it's said like, and usually they do go past that point, or that's part of the job of the doula, is to help them get past that point, and they usually don't end up having the epidural. Don't say that, because she may not be one of those people who can get past that point. And now she's remembering, oh, everybody else did. Instead, I didn't.
Right. So what else? What's on your list?
And we talked about this already, not on the podcast, but I mean, in this podcast, but who is your care provider? And I know you talked to them about this.
Usually in the interview.
Yeah, but
there could be more discussion about what to expect from that care provider.
Because what happens is, you may also not know a lot about that care provider when you first meet them. And then you're doing some research, however that may be, and finding out a little bit more about this care provider, and getting maybe a sense that this care provider has a high C-section rate, or rarely does, unmedicalized births. And the chances of her getting what she wants, well, everybody can try and everything can always turn out well. But wouldn't you rather, it's kind of like saying, I want to go to Puerto Rico, so I think if I get to somewhere else, I probably will have the same experience that I would have in Puerto Rico. Well, you're going to have an experience, but it's probably not going to be the Puerto Rican experience.
Right.
I mean, that's probably not a good analogy.
No, I get it. Yeah.
So that is an important thing. Yeah, always we want to know in the interview, who is your care provider?
I think another analogy might be if what you want is a slow meandering drive in the country, you don't hire a race car driver to take you there.
That's a much better one.
If what you want is an exciting thrill ride, you don't hire, a horse-drawn carriage for that. It's not a judgment on one being worse than the other. It's just make sure you get someone who knows how to do what you want.
Right. But in the interview, knowing who the care provider is really important. But if they haven't hired you yet, you have to be really careful about, directing them away from their care provider.
Yeah.
Because who are you? You're just somebody that they're interviewing, and you're already telling them, oh, well, you really need to consider changing to this or that. I mean, I know it can be appropriate at times, but it's a finer line. Whereas once they're your client, it becomes your responsibility to help them have the best birth experience. So the care provider, we can never make somebody change. But
nor should we.
No, ever. But we can give them their options around that. And we've discussed this in other podcasts, but it can make or break many a birth experience. I mean, there's still no guarantee with if they change to that provider, that group, that they're going to get their exact birth. But we've just raised the probability greater than had they stayed somewhere else.
But for the point that you always make, that needs to be their call, because then if they don't get the birth they wanted, they need to own it and not say, well, my doula made me switch to this group of midwives and I still had a C-section.
But you know what? It's so interesting, and this has been said before, but I have never had anyone, and I know anytime I say that, the next time it can be that person, but nobody has ever said, oh God, I wish I hadn't changed. Of all the people who have changed.
Because you counsel them, it's their decision.
It's their decision, and they do get the births that they are looking for.
I've never had anybody say that either.
And even if they do end up with the C-section or the epidural or whatever the case that came out of their picture, they still feel they made the right choice because they were treated in a different way.
Yeah.
But I have heard women
say they wish they had switched.
Yeah.
Much more common.
And that's a sad thing because you can't make that different for them.
I was just at a birth circle recently, and someone was everyone was telling who their care providers were, and one woman said this doctor, who is a perfectly lovely human being who's in a practice where no one else is like him, and I just wished I could just take her aside and be like, look, let me just tell you right now. But I thought, it's her experience. I wasn't her doula, first of all, but I just wanted to be like, just think about like, let me just save you a whole bunch of pain and trauma, because the chance that you're going to get your guy is like 1 in 10, and 9 out of 10, you're not going to get what you want. And 1 out of 10 you are. And why are you doing this? He's a lovely man. He's a wonderful doctor. I love him too. But anyway, that's
so I think that, and also, and it depends on the community that you live in. But if you know that provider has privileges at different facilities in your community, I mean, if there's multi-hospitals, or if they are at a birth center, you may know that this facility actually is more friendly towards what this person is looking for than the other facility. In essence, facilities are facilities, it seems, but not always is that the case. There are definitely facilities where the nursing staff, which is who they're going to be primarily working with, are more on board with the wishes of this woman. So they may have chosen the right provider of care. who but isn't going to be there most of the labor and birth. And so they're in a facility with nurses who may be lovely as human beings but aren't on the same page with this woman, and it becomes a conflict. So it's knowing that and discussing that, because I know, in our community, a lot of the practitioners have privileges at 2 to 3 different facilities, and it's knowing which one is potentially more amicable.
Amicable.
Oh God. More friendly.
Yeah, more friendly.
Yeah.
Okay, so partners, interventions.
Okay. And interventions, and here's the thing that really gets people scared about when they do the workshops. Like, how am I possibly going to cover all of these interventions?
We don't
need to do that. We, as an organization, give you a packet of really what we think are really good articles that cover a lot of these things. And we highly recommend that you give these articles to your clients. So if you're not part of us, but finding something like that for your clients, where they can, books are wonderful, but sometimes I think articles are better because they're short. They're, you want to make sure they're not blogs, that they're research based. Partners, no offense to them, because some are not this way, but they don't really, a lot of times they don't want to read a whole birth book or 3 birth books, but if you give them an article, they will read the article. And I have, this is what I feel, and I have said it. This is required reading. It's not an option. I require you to read it because I want them to be informed. Mm-hmm. And it's better than me having to talk them through that. I think another topic that can be covered in this intervention thing, and should be, and I'm sure this comes up somewhere, Sarah, with you as well, and so most doulas, is inductions. Mm-hmm. Because we know that nowadays that's just got to be part of the conversation.
I will tell you, I've gone back and forth a lot in my own practice on this. Uh-huh. And I tend to ask people, if I have a super anxious type, I don't always, I'm torn, because sometimes I just say, well, let's talk about it when and if it comes up. You know what I mean? And I sort of know at 39 weeks, if they're going in for a doctor, and I know the doctor, and I'm like, well, call me if you get there and anything comes up so we can discuss it. I don't know. I'm torn on this because I think sometimes you're borrowing trouble by talking about, it depends on the personality. It really depends on the personality. And there are some people that I feel want to have their head stuck in the sand and shouldn't, and they need a little bit of a reality check. There's some people who I feel like are just borrowing trouble, and they want to know every possible thing that could go wrong every step of the way. And I remember feeling very stressed out being talked to, when I was 39 weeks pregnant and the doctor's like, okay, in 3 weeks, we're going to be talking induction. I'm like, why are we talking about this now? This isn't even an issue yet. Or the midwife actually, the first time, so I'm torn on, I think it's important to bring up, and that's a very tailored part of my visit, I would say.
And I
depending on these
I
things.
Respect that you do that, and I like that it's tailored according to the personality and what anxiety. That said, I think that our responsibility is not to skirt issues that can be uncomfortable either. Yeah. So I think it can be approached with everyone. It can even be just touched upon, like, part of this discussion is that if you go past your due time, part of a very common protocol in this culture of birth is inductions, which is something that I have information about that I can give you, because I'm not saying that you will have it. I don't think you need to dwell on it, but you do need to be informed. So if the topic comes up at 40 weeks, you're not caught off guard.
Yeah, I do that much. Yeah.
So I think that's where, and we, again, have articles in our manual, childbirth, the
evidence-based birth.
No, that's
childbirth connection.
Childbirth connection, which has a new name now that I can't remember. But they're still, you can find them under childbirthconnection.org. They connected with they're part of another organization now. Have excellent articles about inductions. there are pros and cons to it. So it's not like don't do an induction or don't do an intervention, just clarifying that. So I think that's important, that interventions don't have to be taught, though, in detail.
Right.
They take childbirth classes, they read books and or articles, and they learn, and then you fill in the blanks.
Right.
You give them the reasons why they may need this, why they may not need it, what the risks are to it, what the benefits are to it, and let them ask you questions.
Right. So I think we're blurring a little bit to the first and second visit, you know,
I guess so.
But I think we'll just talk about what you should be covered, and then you can decide what you want to. I mean, there's plenty. You can Google what to cover in a prenatal visit. There's lists of stuff. This is a more general discussion of sort of philosophically what to cover. I want to say typically in the second visit, I would cover routine newborn care. One of the things I think people don't, immediate postpartum care is what I mean.
Yeah, because that was another one I was going to bring up.
What I think a lot of people are very conscious and aware of their birthing choices, and then they have the baby and they just are not prepared at all. And so I would talk about just the root, the vitamin K, the eye ointment, the
weighing,
PKU, the
cord.
bath, the cord clamping. And I do talk about circumcision. I talk about if they're having a boy or if they don't know. I just ask them if they know what they're doing and if they want information. This is a very controversial topic amongst doulas.
It's so interesting because it should not be any more controversial from my point of view than anything else that we're talking about. I think it becomes controversial because everybody has an opinion about everything, including circumcision. But it's part of the whole, if you give it in impartial information, evidence-based information, then you're doing your job.
So I'm not afraid to bring up that word. I don't tell people what to do, and I don't.
No, because you don't tell them to take an epidural either, but you bring it up.
Right. I don't tell people. I hope that most of my clients would not know my personal opinion on that. And I'm not even sure if people in the podcast, listening to the podcast, know my personal opinion on that based on our discussions. But I do bring it up, and I make sure that they're prepared to make that decision and that they have the information they need. So we talk about all that. We talk about what it's going to be like in the hospital, and then we talk about at the second visit, typically a postpartum plan.
Good, because I think that's to me, one of the topics that you're talking about right now, Sarah, I think are so important that they be included in prenatal visits. Again, whether it be your first one or the second one that you have with them. It is so missed, this recovery stage, which is what you're describing, the immediate after the baby is born. The recovery stage, what will happen and how then the hospital stay will be. And then the postpartum, the plan for when you go home with this baby, what's next? Right.
And I encourage a laying in, or at least considering a laying in, even if it's just for a couple days. But whatever you can sort of pull off, given the support that you have in your other children. And
I was just at a birth the other day, and it was an Ethiopian couple, and the mother was the grandmother of the baby was there, and she had come over from Ethiopia to be with her daughter, and she was describing the laying in period there is 4 months. And we just both sighed very deeply, and she said, not like she's lying in sick that time. She's lying in being nurtured and taken care of. She's still doing life, but not in the capacity that she was doing before or will have to do after. But I said, we both.
Yeah, I know. I've heard a lot of stories like that. So we talk about thinking about visitors and thinking about, and then, I like to have a lot of time, especially in the second visit, but just for sort of the free floating, what are you worrying about? And what are you
thinking about?
And in I like to do in the first visit more facts, information. And in the second visit more, everything you need to know. Now you just need to surrender to this and just be ready for it.
And what's going on? What are you thinking? What are you feeling?
And I ask the partner that too.
Good, because the partner, their worries and their concerns and their fears are as prevalent.
Yes.
And as needed to
Absolutely.
be exposed.
One time I asked, what are you worried about? And the partner said, I'm worried she can't do it. And I thought, oh God, I can't believe he just said that in front of her. And I can't believe I opened that up. And then I thought, well, better to be talking about it now than when she's 7 centimeters and saying she can't do it. And he's like, yeah, I don't think you can either. And at first I was so mad at myself that energy entered the conversation. And I was still a little mad at him for putting it in that way. But I ended up thinking, well, I'm glad we got this out in the open now.
Did he ask that question? And I think I know the answer to this, but did he ask that question like, I'm afraid she won't be able to do it and I'm not sure how I can help her? Or was it?
Yes.
Which isn't bad question.
Well, he was sort of, and how I can help her and she's going to be disappointed and that, she really wants to do this and I'm afraid she can't. And so what are we going to do? How are we going to pick up the pieces when she can't do this, even though she wants to? It was a tough thing to navigate. But what else? I mean, I want to start to wrap this up. But
here's another one that we didn't talk about, though I think you do, and this is included, is labor itself. I mean, the stages of labor and the phases of labor. As much as we know that labor can have its own story and it'll have its own map. There is a typical way of looking at labor that we want our clients to know that they're being viewed through.
Right.
And helping them understand that perspective, but also helping them understand there's something called the prodromal phase.
Right. Yes.
And that's for all mamas.
Yeah.
But most especially for the first-time pregnant woman. What labor really looks like, when it's really the labor you want to pay attention to, it will get your attention. When to call you during those times, when you might arrive to start supporting them. But the whole labor stages and phases, including the pushing, the resting phase, perhaps that might happen, and the placenta.
And I have a custom handout that I've made with my letterhead, and you can easily do that yourself, that I hand out, that talks about different things you can do during different phases, and we use it to go over, here in early labor, you really don't want me with you. You want me to you want to save me up, save up my energy, and you're going to be more efficient and dilate faster if you have some privacy. You don't want me over there when you're 2 centimeters and your contractions are 12 minutes apart,
right.
So yeah, that's a good point. Definitely talk about prodromal and expectations for what their labor might look like, but also not all women look like this, but your doctor may be expecting you to look like this. And here's how we're going to handle that.
And don't get caught in the chart that says at 1 to 3 centimeters, 1 to 4 centimeters, you'll be smiling and laughing.
Right.
And then when you get to 5 to 7, you'll have a straight face.
Line.
And then when you get to 7 to 10, you'll have the frowny face.
I'm not sure I've ever been to a labor that was exactly,
I know, exactly.
Textbook.
But people get stuck. They get those charts and they get stuck in it. And especially the partners, they think that's what they're holding on to. So we're helping them have a different perspective on it, understanding that could be, but also that it's going to play itself out and you're not going to be alone during this. We can discuss it. But I love that you make it clear that you're not going to be there and physically there in labor. Like I've always said this, when you hear the doula has been at a 3-day labor, I think, well, I've been at 3-day labors, but not physically present for all 3 days.
Right. Well, I have a friend who I tease all the time because she just is really good about, I don't know, timing. She's lucky, whatever, but she
sure is.
She is rarely at a birth, super marathon birth. And she'll always say, well, I was on the phone with them every hour for the last 12, even if I was only with them in person for the last 5, I still was hopping out of my...
Exactly. She's still in labor. And that's what I always try and say to doulas. It's not like you're ignoring those people. You are still laboring with them, but you're carrying on in your life like you want them to carry on in their life.
Right.
The other thing I just want to bring back about postpartum is it is a good idea to discuss with the couple together, if this is a couple, about how this is an important time for them and what are their roles going to be during the postpartum period as well. that the partner will not be able to be breastfeeding the baby if that's the plan. And ideally, we don't want women pumping right from the beginning so that the partner can have the bonding experience of giving the baby a bottle. It just is more work for the woman, and it's just keeping the baby from the woman, unless there's real good reasons to do that. But there are other ways for that partner to be really helpful to the woman, taking care of her and needs, taking care of themselves, but really the focus being on her so she can take care of the baby well. Mm-hmm. And about their relationship and how it shifts and changes with a baby, and even with multiple babies, that it's always it doesn't matter how much you love each other, it doesn't matter how much you love each other. It's going to be stressful.
Well, it's what you just mentioned is interesting, because if this is a second or third or fourth or fifth baby, we also are going to talk in prenatals about the earlier pregnancies and births,
right?
What to learn from those and what not to
bring forward,
assume
right,
from those. And then same with the postpartums.
Yeah.
You know, what did you do before that worked? I mean, we're gonna bring that.
So
we need to wrap this up.
Okay, so to wrap it up, we just kind of went around a lot of different topics, and so what we want you to do is you consider what are the three, for instance, just hone it down for the moment. It might end up that you talk about 1 to 5 different things during that first prenatal visit. But for the moment, think, what are the 3 most important topics I do want to cover in that first prenatal visit based on what was just brought up in this podcast?
And the second thing I want you guys to think about is, what did we leave out? Because we did leave things out. This was not intended to be necessarily a syllabus for your first visit. But so when this podcast airs, let's have some discussion on the Facebook page of what else, what are the most important 3, and what is the bigger universe of other things.
Right. And what we're going to follow up this podcast with, either the next one or shortly after, is how we do postpartum visits with our clients as well, because that's a whole nother big question that comes up.
Yep.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody, again for listening. As I mentioned, we're doing right now our 2015 schedule. We're putting the finishing touches on our schedule of workshops. ToLabor is a doula training and certifying organization. So if you'd like to bring a workshop to your city or town, please email us at tolaborworkshops@gmail.com. And we'll talk about how to get one near you. Check out our website and see the ones that are already scheduled. We'd love to have you for one. If you've trained before or not, there's a discount if you've trained with another organization or with ToLabor before. We have people all the time who trained with ToLabor
who come
years
back.
ago who come back because it's a refreshment for your journey.
I think the winner right now is a woman who's taken the workshop 5 times over the last 10 years. And she says each time she comes, it's just so reaffirming to her, and it's inspiring. And she just feels like she's at a 3-day wonderful labor and birth.
That's awesome. This is hard work. This takes it out of you. Mm-hmm. And it's good to do. I mean, I think we did a whole podcast on self-care. I think continuing education in the right way is a form of self-care.
Yes.
Reaffirming what you do, making you, and I also learn something new every time I I get it. I'm always learning new as well.
Exactly. There's always something new to be learned at a birth, at a workshop, at these podcasts.
Yes. So, and send us any feedback. If there's a particular topic or question, send it to ToRAISEQuestions@gmail.com. We'd love a rating on iTunes. Yes. We'd love any feedback that you have. And join us for further discussion of these topics on the Facebook page. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Bye.